Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience. We are here today for our monthly installment of Artwork
Lisa.
NASCAD Alumni Talks. While our community is a global one, our talk today and our school itself are hosted in Kjipuktuk, Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. We're honored to gather, speak, and make artwork here. My name is Molly Cronin. I'm the host of Artwork, and every month we get together with two of our esteemed and exciting alum to talk about a particular area that two people have gone into after their time at NASCAD. Today we're here to talk about the exciting world of fashion, and I'm joined by Akshay, Tyagi, and Lindsay, Delaney, and we're going to be talking about fashion. Akshay is a celebrity fashion stylist and costume designer with a BFA from 2008. And Lindsay is a model, content creator, and photographer with a BFA from 2011. So thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
To get us started, maybe I'll ask you both to kind of like tell us a little bit about where you're joining us from and what you do in the fashion world. Lindsay, I'm looking at you right now, so maybe you could get us started.
I'm based in Toronto, so my base is celebrity and fashion photography, but I've been moving in more to creative direction. I also direct fashion films. I've also been doing some body positivity modeling lately. I'm highly active in the press with interviews and just getting everything out as possible. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but my base is photography, but I'm in Toronto right now. But yeah.
Cool. So much to talk about. I can't wait. Akshay, where are you? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know it's a rule.
Following that amazing series of things that Lindsay's been doing, I mean, I'm glad that actually via this conversation that we got connected, which is really exciting. And also I see a lot of really familiar names from my amazing time at NASCAD. So hi, Lisa. Hi, Heather. Hi, Anka. I believe you guys are here secretly, but I am in India, which is where I originate from, way back from when, and currently in Mumbai, and that's where I'm working and operating as a costume designer and a fashion stylist. I don't know. I think the thing we have to do as creatives is constantly keep evolving and finding and figuring out who you are as a professional. So it's taken me a while to really zone in on the fact that I'm finally feeling very confident, comfortable as a costume designer. Though I've worked across retail, visual merchandising, films, advertising, editorials, all of the works. Because I think at the end of the day, you kind of have to keep learning. That's the only thing you have to just do. So yeah, here I am, currently based in Bombay and in India, and I guess navigating the world of fashion in both the East and the West as much as possible. So yes, thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for joining us. No, it's exciting to hear how diverse both of your portfolios are and the kind of work you do in the fashion industry. I think there's going to be lots for us to get into. But I'd like to do a little like time traveling for a minute. And I'd like for you both to think back on your time at NASCAD. And can you tell us a bit about what that was like and how it sort of shaped the work that you do today?
I think that for me, so NASCAD, I went to NASCAD. I got in with advanced standing. I had a diploma from another institute. So when I came into NASCAD, I came in guns blazing. So I was there to do work and to switch things up. I also see Elliot's on here, and Elliot was in some of my classes. And NASCAD really, I love the aspect of putting work on a wall and people ripping it apart. Like that was like the critiques for me are my favorite. And I think that I understood what a critique was more so than, because I was a little bit older when I attended. So the interchangeable of the classes and what it was that I could push my limits is just kind of helped me mold what I'm doing now, because when I do productions, I do it all. So we had an advanced photo critique class, and I helped organize the show outside of the graduating class, but it was just like, well, why can't we have our own? It was just like always pushing boundaries, and it gave me the guidance and comfortability to be who I am, but also I also learned some mistakes along the way sometimes that you don't have to be so forceful, because I'm a very forceful human. But I definitely think that NASCAD shaped my mind and gave me this place of what it is that I wanted to do. Because I mean, when I came in, I was like, I want to do fashion, and there was comments made that fashion wasn't art, and I was just like, that was my platform. And once I proved that concept, I mean, Bob Beam was one of my professors. He's the most magical human, and I have so much to say about that man. But his open door policy was amazing. And when someone lets you be who you are, and they recognize everything and then you move forward, it's so powerful. And NASCAT, it gave me, I guess, giving my feet wet, because when you leave school and you go in those same situations, it's not necessarily received the same, you know what I mean? It's more of like your training wheels for certain mech, but it definitely helped me find my voice as an artist, and it was the stepping stones to where I am now. And I definitely wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't gone through all those experiences. Like, we went to New York for like a week at one time, this class, and that trip, anytime you run into somebody, you're like, oh my God, that trip, like you did every gallery and like going around, and like it was crazy. Like, we stayed in a hostel in Harlem, and it was just like, you can't, those experiences, going through and seeing different arts. Like, I've never been exposed to art like that, like at the Guggenheim and MoMA and the Whitney, and then going back to New York and going to the new Whitney, and like, it's your base. So that's how NASCAR helped shape me.
Oh, I love that. And I love thinking about too, like the art crit as an entry point to the kind of like criticism and competitiveness of the fashion industry that I imagine you guys
It was really,
experience.
yeah, the critiques for me were like super, like I was all about it. Do you know what I mean? And the more I understood, I would push, because right now where I sit, sometimes people are afraid to say things to me, and I want to hear it. Like, on my sets, I want to, like, I don't care if you're getting me coffee, or if you're paying my bills, or if you're a 10,000 model, or if you're just whatever you are, like, I want to hear opinions. It's still my decision, but I always embrace the voices, especially of the younger generation, because they're our future. So if it's something that at the end of the day, the project can be better, I want to hear it. And Elliot's on here, and we used to go back and forth in class. He was one of my favorites. But like, it's not about emotional, it's about bettering yourself. And I think sometimes people get too sensitive, basis of understanding that, like, if you can convince somebody or get them to see the point of view of your art, do you know what I mean? Like, practicing those skills, then that's the gift. You don't have to like it or agree, but if you see it, and I always got people to see it, I want, like, you might not think this is art, but like, now do you see it? Because then it's like, that's going to be you out pitching yourself to your client, or you're going to be sitting somewhere and wanting a grant, or this person to hire you. But like, it's like, do you understand that you're able to come across and essentially get that as your own? So, yeah.
No, I love that.
Yes, I mean, just following up with that a little bit. For me, I think it's I was a few years prior to Lindsay at NASCAT, and I graduated in 2008. And I remember for us, the fashion program actually kind of started with us, essentially. Like, I did one of the first like wearable art shows. Like, I remember organizing one in one of the years in like my second year or something. And I was just like really navigating, because at that time NASCAT did not really have its fashion program per se. Like, it was such a great learning experience for me, because I think the only advice I remember from my most amazing time with Professor Naoko Furue during textiles was, she was just like, just talk less and do more. Like, she just used to keep saying that, like, that there's so much that we had to learn to just do with our hands and consistently be so proactive, that I think that was the biggest learning. Like, that you couldn't just sit there and have things happen for you. You needed to be so resourceful, because even for me, as I left, once I left Canada and came back to India, to start over in a place where I had not been for like my entire adult life was really daunting, obviously. But at the same time, I knew that I just had to approach it with, like, what, my work speaks for itself, like my experience speaks for itself, and I need to be able to just like really like these critiques really do give you the thick skin that you require to be able to stand up for yourself, to be able to really like say like, this is my work, this is my work, and this is what I know, and I don't care if you are like the top of the tops in whoever you are. This is my skill set, and that is an experience you cannot take away from me. So I think that was for me one of the biggest I guess really like confidence inspiring like skill that like I realized only when I had to be in a situation where I really had to like push myself as a career, as a creative in the career field of a country of like 1.6 billion people. You know, I was just like, okay, like how do I get to make my mark over here? Because
Yeah.
it's, you know, the industries, the more you work within them, you realize how microscopically small they are. And the more like now with Instagram and the world is just like feeling like, I mean, now Lindsay and I can just like talk to each other and be like, hey, are you working on this? I'm working on this creative, like cool, like let's share ideas, and boom, overnight we can work on something. So it's quite fascinating. But
Want me to come to India, no problem.
we'll just do a swap. We'll just do a
Yeah.
swap. No stress.
I'm good
Yeah.
for that. Not to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but you just
Yeah.
you know, Mumbai, no problem. That's not a problem.
Done. Yourself. So yeah. So I think that would be my biggest like learning in terms of how NASCAD has like really taught me how to just stand up for myself and really be like, you know what, like I've got this because I have been shredded to pieces multiple times. So yeah, let's bring it on that way.
Yeah, the kind of confidence that you learn in that environment. That's excellent.
Yes,
what,
for sure.
I wanted to ask you both, what was it that drew you to fashion? And did you sort of end up in the path that you thought you would? Is this the area in fashion you thought you would work in? But ultimately, yeah, what was it about fashion that called to you?
I'm gonna go first, Lindsay, while you let your coffee settle. Basically, for
He
me,
already
I
understands
actually
you.
I was pretty clear always that I wanted to work in a very commercial sense of fashion when I joined NASCAD. I actually was really glad that I ended up kind of taking all these other classes and courses that kind of helped me open my mind from a very like fixated point of view. And as I was learning, I remember Gary Markle was, who's still, I think, very much around at the fashion forefront of NASCAD. And at that time, he was just like, he's like, you're at the wrong school then. Like, if this is what you think you're here for, then like figure it out that this is not the place for you. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, this is fashion. You have to teach me what I need to know. And he was just like, that's not how it works. Like, you know, so for me, like learning that aspect of discovering what it is that you actually are there at NASCAD for specifically. And the end of university is only when you really realize that like the whole thing is about you needing to be very clear that it's the system that you're learning. It's the conceptualizing that you're learning. It's not really the end result per se at that specific moment, which we are so fixated upon, but it's actually these processes and like streams of thought in how to approach something. And that's actually still one of my strongest traits till today. Like I can walk into a room and talk about something and be like, this is how I see it. And they'll be like, yeah, we convinced that you know what you're doing. And then you figure it out like on the side, like, oh my God, how do I build this? How do I make that happen? That is the thing about being resourceful as you build experience and build like a network and build different people. But the thing is, you have to be able to know what the vision is. So I think definitely for me, when it came to like post NASCAD is when I realized learning a little bit of like the commercial side of work, which is working in like visual merchandising, and then kind of just like puttering around with personal styling for people. And that is when I was like, I have this weird combination of gifts of talking to people with also understanding their body types and understanding what their problems are. So when I moved this, you know, cluster of things together is when I was like, I think I can understand your issues and help you visually sort them out. So that became the thing. So now I describe it to everybody. I'm like, neck down, I'll take care of it. Whatever happens here is not my problem. So, in here, on here, around here, not my issue. So,
yeah, that's all on you. But hello, yeah. Well, wonderful. It sounds like you've really found your footing in the industry. That's so excellent. Lindsay,
it's
what
been
about
it's been a challenge.
yeah. I'm sure it's like, again, it's so you spoke about how competitive it is, but it sounds like you bring a really unique skill set that I'm excited to talk more about.
I think the thing is that people don't realize the challenge doesn't stop, you know, and then the more
Yeah.
higher up you become, the more challenging it becomes. Like
Yeah.
it's like they say it's lonely at the top, they're not lying. So
It's true.
do you want to repeat the question that you were like, I just want to
Yeah.
reiterate in my head. I know that
Yeah.
we have
What
other
what drew you to the fashion industry, Lindsay?
oh God. I think it's when I was in school, I've always like been obsessed with fashion. I've talked about this on multiple platforms and media platforms, but like I was obsessed with like magazines when I was a kid, right? So I would like the Teen Bop, and then like I was a huge New Kids on the Block fan, not to date myself, but like understanding the intertwines. And then I myself, like I was like always been a big girl, but my mother she sewed. So like, you know, for semi-formal for high school, like there was nothing that fit. I'm from Newfoundland, like small town Newfoundland, like you know what I mean? Like Stephenville, I don't know, like 5,000. And St. John's, like, you know, Elliot probably knows the population of St. John's. I don't, but like it's small. So I essentially the resources for me were not the same as what I would see buying these Teen Bot magazines. So from a very young age, I was picking out fabrics and picking out patterns, and my mother would sew these things for me. And like I thought, like I didn't know it wasn't normal because I have a really good loving family. Like I'm very blessed. And then as things started to change, you know, I just became more interested, especially with music videos and like the storytelling, and like I was very like captured by it. And then I just decided like it just I was drawn to it. I didn't really it picked me. I didn't pick it. I always say that. Like I didn't, you know, I people it's my life isn't champagne and red carpets. Like yesterday I was like at Snapchat Canada, like literally with the 25 the new gens, the Canadian National Fashion Awards, they named the top 25 talents to look out for in Canada. And I was on that list. And, you know, we went to the Canadian Arts and Fashion Awards, and, you know, I was an honoree. They put us all on the stage, and there was no certificates. There was no, you know, and I was like, nothing to knock. It was great, but I was like, okay, but it was the first time they'd done that. So I had a meeting with the president, and we went to lunch. We got certificates yesterday. We're talking about how, like, you know, representation in the city. Like, I've met with different management teams here, and it's just like I need to like things need to choose you. You know what I mean? But you can still make paths for certain ways. So like even talking at Snapchat, they were telling us that they have, you know, Snapchat is going to be, it's crazy. I couldn't even believe the presentation I saw yesterday, but being in a room full of 25 people and starting a conversation, that's what I'm known for. I don't always lead it, but like, it's good for like getting things going like that. When we organized that, a gallery exhibit the same night, you know, at Annalene Lois Gallery, like that was like I started the conversation, but you know, my colleague and still good friend and classmate Chloe O'Brien, like she took one side, and everyone, like we were all like, Elliot was in that class, like it was crazy. So I think that fashion shows me, because now that I'm sitting here, and yes, I'm a photographer and I've traveled all over and I've worked with celebrities and this, and I've been on red carpets, but that is the base of what I think my message is going to be now. Like, you know, I walked in New York Fashion Week and Toronto Fashion Week here. Evan Bedell is a designer who won Project Runway, the first one. And, you know, and then there's a stylist there, and they literally like, he has these play suits, and it was a see-through play suit with my bra and underwear. I was in this like gorgeous jacket, whatever, but you know, and Stacey McKenzie walked in that runway show too. And I, knowing what my voice and what fashion is now, like it's definitely it's a journey for what that is. And I'm moving in more film direction. So fashion shows me. And there's been times where I'm like, I'm gonna quit and go work on a cruise ship, and oh, like yeah, I'm going back to Newfoundland to teach. And then it's like 2 days later, I'm like, no, you're Lindsay, you're not doing that. So, you know, I think that you have to, if there's one thing that I've learned, especially since the pandemic as well, because that was a whole, we'll talk about that. I know that you want to talk about afterwards what I did during the pandemic, but I always trust in the process of my work, right? So when I started trusting in the process of my work, and I started at a very young age, especially at school, like I would put things up and move the needle, and you have to trust that. Now I think I'm trusting in the process of who I am and as a human, and I have to trust in the process of life a little bit more. And since I let go of that, the two are being, married, like, just know that if it's choosing you and you feel that, then you can't, don't let anyone else tell you anything different. You know what I mean? So yeah, so fashion chose me. I didn't choose it.
I love that. Well, yeah, and as I mentioned, you guys are clearly bringing like such particular and like unique skills to these industries. And I kind of want to talk to both of you a bit about what you have stated as your kind of what you think are your strengths. So Akshay, you talk about your meticulousness in your work and how it sort of lends itself really well to the culture of celebrity in Indian cinema. Can you speak a bit about that world and the kind of skills you need to bring to succeed in that environment?
So nobody tells you when you're learning how to like be a craftsperson or a creative, also how to work with people and how to read the room. I think that's the very important skill set that like you can't just walk in and be like, this is what I do and deal with it. It's like, no, this is a celebrity. Like the celebrity will have an opinion. The celebrity has a posse. They have a team. They have managers. They have like, it's a full working like breakdown, the director, the producer, the makeup artist, the hair artist, everybody is there. So, you have to be very aware of the fact that you're not the only one who is like in charge, right? Like you get so used to this weird like I have this amazing opportunity and you want to like it's all about just like crushing your ego entirely and not even having it enter the room. Like, there's that doormat that says leave your shoes and egos outside. Like I think that's the main like thing that you have to work with when you're working with celebrity culture. Um Obviously as you're growing and you're figuring out and you can speak to your strengths, you can speak to your you can make sure the room is reading you at times with like the kind of work ethic that you bring in and the success rates with the work that you have to keep going. And I think Lindsay said it so perfectly. It's like the higher you move on up, it's not that it gets easier. It's in fact like that much harder to maintain, that much harder to like continue, that much harder to like keep being on top of your game, because like there will be somebody new with way more energy or a little more time and attention who will just be able to swoop in and be like, hey, like I am the new trendy fun thing to look at. Like, let's work with that person. And that does happen, like, so you have to be very clear and receptive to the fact that there is an ebb and flow to this entire system, and the confidence with the fact that also that as you work through this whole like industry, there is actually never a shortage of work. Like we are so conditioned to think that there's always going to be like some scarcity. And you go, I know exactly what she's saying, like, oh my God, like I should just go and study like my master's right now. I can't work anymore. Like I'm not successful any longer. Like I don't know what's happening. And you navigate these whole like things. And I think the important thing is that you have to keep learning. You have to keep yourself activated in a way that you don't lose your passion as to why you're doing it. And if that means slowing down and doing one important project a year, if like that's what you're working on as a full long feature format film, then that's fine. Like, take the time. Like currently, actually, I would love to own up to the fact that this room here, and I'm sure each one of us has probably gone through this as well, because there are significantly more esteemed and established people in this room that are like listening to us chat right now, which is so it's really nice. Like I know Lisa is amazingly like prolific with her work, and the only thing is that when you get burned out, like you need to know you're burnt out, and you need to know that like this is not the time for me to force myself to work on something and prove myself, because it's just not required. Like it's better you take rest, it's better you slow down. So I'm in the midst of like actually dealing with the burnout, so which is amazing, because like this is like my 7th week and I'm just like of not working, and only next week have I actually taken on projects to like come back to like a little bit just like puttering with things here and there. And I was like, this is a way healthier way of navigating staying creative and staying passionate, because I need to have the energy reserves like for anything now coming up that will be of excitement to me, right? Like, so I think this weird cycle, and so much energy exchange happens, so many people that you're like interacting with, and like the stakes are high, the pressure is high. Like this is like literally talking about an industry that is catering to, like, it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and your decision of a certain color of a shirt on an actor can somehow like really influence a wide range of people to want to go and dress like that, like as a costume designer, especially, right, when I'm working with certain projects. So it's definitely, like for me, it's important that we just stay true to what you need to make sure that your creative like source is protected at all times primarily. So I would say that that would be like the best thing I would advise to anybody is like when you're starting to feel like worn out, like don't try to plow through that like feeling. Trust that you can take that time away, trust that you can come back to it, and definitely yeah, like I think definitely just attack it with far more insight and far more energy when whatever new thing that comes your way. So that would be my point on that.
I had someone when I asked them like what they were doing recently, they said that they were having like a fallow year, like where you let your,
Okay.
like the farming term where you let your your field lay fallow and it kind of
Yeah.
rests for the year. And I was like, that's great. And I was so happy that someone just sort of said that in a conversation of I'm actually not working. I'm needing like creative
Yeah.
rest time. And that was very exciting. So thank you for talking
Yeah.
about that. It's very
Mostly.
crucial to both our like well-being and our practices as creative people.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, you cannot be an endless creative well. Like it's not possible, right? So like, I think understanding that the commerce of it and the attention of it and that balance is something that you have to make sure you keep on top of. Like, I mean, I know like I'm not deluded about the fact that primarily the followers or whatever, somehow this Instagram validation that we have
Mhm.
is via the fact that like the celebrities, like I might just be posting their image first and they're like, oh my God, we get to see it first here. That's all it is. So it's kind of just like interesting to know what is it that, you bring to the table and not to be like confused about the fact that you cannot let go of that personality. Like, so I think definitely like with all these amazing again, I think it really comes back to the fact that the systems that NASCAD had in play with its like classes, with its critiques, with its like you do your show, you put up this gallery like exhibit, people come in from the public, and it's like about putting yourself out there and being really open to that kind of reception is very important as a skill. So definitely I would say like amazing in hindsight
Yeah.
how that worked out. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Lindsay, I want to ask you about the kind of things you bring to navigate the fashion industry. You talk about kind of working in a male dominated industry as a photographer, but then of course you're also navigating it as a plus size person in an industry that doesn't traditionally celebrate that type of body. So what kind of skills do you bring to that environment to kind of help you move through those spaces?
I don't take any bullshit. Never that's I think that's what it is. They're gonna be straight up. Like I just don't take it. I go in, I have to walk in a room confidently. And I'm not gonna say that I didn't have like days where I would come home and cry, but like don't ever let them see you sweat. That's all that is, And it's more or less like I literally just walked in Toronto Fashion Week for Evan Bedell in the same runway show as Stacey McKenzie. If you had told me that when I was in NASCAR, I would have told you you were insane. So it's also like, I think the skill set that I bring, when I go to an event, my people skills, being from Newfoundland and how I am and how I navigate myself, I make sure that I know everybody in that room. Like, because if everyone is there, if I'm at or finding ways to put myself in a room, like it's like a game of Tetris in my head. And I'm really good at doing that, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't take an emotional toll as well. I think it's really interesting that we talk about the burnout stage because when I was at NASCAR, I had a scholarship. I worked 5 jobs. I was in school full time. I was enjoying myself, partying, like I was go, 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 work, 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 work. And I've always been putting stuff out like constantly for the last, I guess, 15 years. I never really stopped. And then I think about December of last year, I was like, okay, so what, like, I had a moment and I had to stop. I had to take a step back. So I just stopped posting on Instagram. I stopped, and like, even like, but my friends were like, when was the last time you stopped? I I I I couldn't tell anybody because I was so focused on where I was going. And I had arrived and had realized I hadn't really gotten, like, I didn't even know I was there. Right. So then when I took the step back and I stopped creating, I stopped doing, like, I had some stuff, like, I shot during the pandemic. I started this thing with a magazine. I'm Addicted Magazine. I'm their fashion editor, doing AI. I put off a party with, George Sully, who created Black Designers of Canada. I was like, has stuff now and hair. Like, I was go. So I just put where, and then I just stopped. And then I got asked to walk in New York Fashion Week. And then I got asked to do the Toronto, like, I had to let other things come in. So instead of me going to things, I let things come to me and then I would decide. And I also need to learn to say no, because every opportunity isn't an
Oh yeah.
opportunity, right? Like, I think I've really only understood what my place is and where, like, I knew I was doing well. I never would go home, and then I would go home to Newfoundland. I'd be on CBC, I'd be on the radio. Like, this was just like me, like, I'm just chatting, but like, it's really important to stop. And now that I've stopped, like, seriously, since like maybe February, like, hardcore stop, and recently just started picking up and working and like cutting things out, it's the things that I my place of what I'm supposed to be doing is even more clear. But mental health is a really important factor that's not talked about in the industry. It's not talked about more through school too. And I think that, it's okay to know that if you're not okay, you know what I mean? And like, as artists, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think the navigation of how that looks like and bringing that to light is even more so what needs to be talked about. So, I think my skill set is that I'm a really good people person. I understand my position of how to get there. And it's just like, I don't take no for an answer. If someone's going to say no, I go on to someone who's going to say yes. And it's really important to look at what your value is. And I think that I always knew I had a strong voice. But yeah, that's what I would say I bring to the table. And I just that's pretty, I never really, like, when I was at NASCAT, I got in with advanced standing and I was sitting in third year courses, and some people were just like, because I had a diploma, right? So I got full credit for my diploma. And people were like, some of those people were not nice to me. And they're like, how are you sitting in? Because it was really cliquey, but I wasn't there to be cliquey, right? So like, the fashion industry is the same way. And there's a new Toronto in town. And like, that's like, for me to be able to organize with the president of the Canadian Arts and Fashion Awards to get the new gens in a room with Snapchat, and us all talking about creators, about like what we're missing, like what can we do together, like where, like, everyone wants to be representation, they want an agency, everyone wants new clients. If we're on this list and you're telling me that I'm one of the top 25s in Canada, that means that you think I'm going to win Image Maker of the Year, right? Like, I'm going to get, like, I'm not going to get a strip out, like that. We're the next generation. So I think the thing is that I'm good at starting conversations and I pull things together. Productions, I've known for pulling productions in Toronto with little or no budget, just to make it like where I can get the bigger budget jobs. But my interpersonal skills, a combination with my talent, like, I was not, like, when I was at NASCAT, like, I can tell you right now, like, the advanced photo critique class, I was not the most talented person in that room, not even close. But the thing is that I had a personality and a skill set, and that together, right? So that's why I was able to move forward. There are people that are not making art anymore that were in that class. That makes me sad, So I feel blessed that I have that gift to gab, and I have that East Coast situation, because being from Newfoundland is part of the reason why I'm successful on top of my talent. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, part of the thing I want to ask you guys, we're gonna sign off in a few minutes for questions, but I think I have time for I want to hear a little bit more about some of these other projects you're working on, Lindsay. I'm gonna ask you in a moment about your film you worked on. But Akshay, I have something written here about two other projects. I've gone kind of all over my questions, so bear with me for a moment. Oh yeah, here. Actually, you've started some new ventures, 5 Easy Steps
Mm,
and Happiness Within. Can you talk a bit
yeah.
about those, please?
So those I would consider, I think, sometimes as like my panic attack work ventures that I just suddenly am like, if I even while I'm having a panic attack, I'll be like, I need a side venture that's going to keep me successful. Like, it's really like weird wiring, I guess. But actually, one of them was started during the pandemic, which was a very different side of just, I think as you sometimes keep working in different, like in your same sort of arena that you are used to, and you meet different people across the way, you have new friends and so on and so forth. And then finally, there's this one friend and I that who both kind of aligned on this really weird like concept of like how we live affects how we create. So it was this venture that we kind of started, which is about like using some sort of holistic ideologies in creating the space that we create in specifically. So whether you are, living in like a studio space and like what is the vibe of that place, right? Like I'm not saying just be like, oh my God, like I'm gonna just, go and do some cleaning up of energy and space like that in that capacity. But it's more like, what if these 5 particular elements of like feng shui met with 5 elements of nature, met with 5 different elements? Like it was this weird like 5-step process that we kind of saw as a system that we offer to people as a consultation. And he has a sustainable background. My business partner on that has a full sustainability eco background on that. So knowing that like even if you're procuring a brick, that brick is from a specific kind of mud. So it was kind of like really interesting, like when we were looking at that. So that was just like one weird like side venture that just sits there, and every so often somebody's like, hey, don't you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And then like I go back into it. But the second thing, which I'm way more excited about, actually, is something that I launched officially last November. And it was like the first time, actually, ever since I set out in my mind that I was going to be a designer, that I created a product range finally after 15 years of like working as a stylist, designer, a costume designer, and so on and so forth. And that actually I partnered with yet another NASCAD graduate who's like my best friend from during NASCAD days, Harry Olson, who was a graphic design major, and he and I collaborated and co-founded this brand, which basically is called Happiness Within, and which means out, and it's like catered to outerwear for inner peace. Because I hate rain, and I think a lot of the Maritimes also, like during my time there, I just remember being like, why is it just shitty weather like every third day? Like why is that like a thing? And Canada in general also does have like, not the best weather, unfortunately. Right now, I think you guys are having a pretty decent summer, though the fires were a little scary. But, you know, yeah, not bad. Okay, good.
We had a lot of rain.
but
We had a lot of rain here in Nova
but
Scotia.
well, yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. So I was like, as part of the daily lifestyle, I was just like, I need something that kind of reminds me to keep that spring in my step, like every day, like even if it is really gloomy, like, even if it was those winter days, we used to like power through somehow and be like, I'm going to go to studio at NASCAD and sit there and like create that work that I really need to do. So I think with that sentiment, we created this brand, and basically it's a reversible raincoat range that I have created, which somehow magically I made a limited edition like of pieces like recently, and without really aggressive marketing, and not even the season for rain. Like monsoons have just kind of started in Bombay now, but I managed to clear out the stock of all the raincoats, like just via like word of mouth and like doing a pop-up here and there. So it's kind of really exciting. So it's like a very early stage of business. And I also, the one thing you learn later is like, as you become entrepreneurial in your skills, that I was like, okay, year one, no expectation of profit. Year two, no expectation of profit. Year three, no expectation of profit. So considering I'm in 6 months, I would consider this like a little like baby stage. So I'm hoping to grow it and make sure that it can hopefully eventually become a bit of a global brand and like be like the next raincoat to own wherever you are. And it's reversible. You get to choose like what mood you're in, whether it's bright and floral, whether it's plain and plain Jane, you know, like however you want to go. And it's like ungendered. It's really kind of like free size. So it's kind of just trying to cater to not anyone specifically. Actually, that's the agenda. It's to not cater to anyone specifically. It's to cater to everyone, whoever may want just a little extra put in their little day from like a gloomy, like shitty weather. So,
Well, it's wonderful to hear you talk about the importance of mental health, and then also think about how that can come into the process itself, how your creative practice
yeah,
can change in trying to improve your quality of life in your space and in the way you move through the world. So I think that's wonderful.
thanks,
Kara's
Kara, for
posted,
putting up the code. Yeah,
yeah.
that's so sweet. Yeah.
Lindsay, I also we're going to close off for questions in a moment, but I'd love to talk to you about your pandemic project as well. You created your first, I believe, fashion film over the pandemic. Can you talk a bit about that process, about what that time was like in the fashion industry? I imagine probably very different than it
Um,
is today.
yeah, that was,
That's
you know what?
crazy.
It's honestly, it's the if the pandemic did anything, it definitely made you push harder because you didn't know when the window was going to close again.
Yeah.
So, because it was opening and closing. So I someone had required the Canadian Fashion Film Festival, and then I always was interested in film. I'd done some BTS for like different magazines, and I'd played with some things, you know, and like video is something that you have to be fluent in if you're going to be in photography, because you know it was definitely something that was coming. But I'm very blessed in the relationships that I've made. So again, with those interpersonal skills. So when they emailed, I was just like, I reached out to this actress. Her name is Cindy Sampson. Her and I are friends. She's also from Nova Scotia. I'd shot her for a cover of a magazine. And then also she started opposite of Jason Priestley on Private Eyes. So I was like, so Sin, I was like, and like everyone was down. I was like, so do you want to do a fashion film? And she was like, sure. So then it was like, okay, the actress had said yes. And then I was like, you know, and then we were in a pandemic. So like you had to be like, you know, they couldn't have a full crew. So I had to find a location. I had done this work with one of these models. He'd been up north building these tiny houses in Muskoka. He's like, there's no running water or electricity, but you guys can go up and use it. So I was like, okay. So we went up there. And then there was this designer, Stefan Karas. His son Kiriako has taken over, and him and I have been chatting, and I just, you know, seen his daughter or his sister in Vancouver, and they have this thing called the vault. And I was like, so can I have stuff from the vault? So they gave me dresses from like 1982. So I was just piecing and just like going, and then, you know, thinking about the pandemic. So we went up to Muskoka. There was no budget. Cindy actually paid for the car, and she had all the food, you know, which was really kind. And it was her and a makeup artist, my assistant, 4 cameras, my laptop, and that was it. And I storyboard, basically it was like different personalities and about where are we going as the name of the film, because we didn't know where we were going, and it kind of fluttered from mystical to like, you know, your different personalities that you have, and when, you know, the range of what it is that you had to tap into the pandemic, because the person that you were during the pandemic is not someone that you normally would be pulled out of you. So, you know, it's just like you're fighting with yourself, you know, like what, because everyone was fighting. I was fighting with myself. So we did it, and I put it together, and I submitted it. And then it got officially selected, and I was just like, this is crazy. And, and then I edited it, I put the music to it, and then it got nominated for Best Canadian Fashion Film, and it was up against like, I knew like I was, the whole process of doing that just made me realize that I need to be in directing more. And I always said I wanted to do directing. I love being behind the camera, but I love putting teams together. And that was my first notion that I just like, like photography will always be able to pay my bills or do this, but like I'm good with teams. And, as a creative director, and then I started moving into realizing what that looked like. But I'm honestly like, that project hits close to my heart. We were up there for 3 days. I slept in a car because I was too scared to sleep in the tiny homes because it was super pitch black. And you think I'm from Newfoundland, but I'm still a woman. That's my womanly ways. But the thing is that these people trusted me to do this, and everyone was seeking something to do. Like I had over $200,000 worth of vintage couture up in the woods, and I didn't like. That's what I mean. Like the relationships you build in order to like to get creative, like you have to be trust. Usually with for styling, you got to sign this and this consignment and this. So like when I mean like the interpersonal skills are so important, but where are we going was, my basically, I guess, gift from the pandemic to be that I need to be directing more. And I have a lot of stuff on the table right now that's, coming through to do different things. And yeah, that was a real win during the pandemic. And that honestly, and then if the pandemic hadn't happened, that project wouldn't have happened. So you got to take your blessings as much as you take, and that was definitely, it really put me in my head. But yeah.
No, that's so exciting. I mean, it's so interesting to hear you both talk about that time and about, I mean, about the kind of creative impetus that came out of it, and also just the way we have to take care of ourselves in these complicated times. So thank you both so much for sharing all of that with us. I'm going to open it up to our guests to ask any questions. So if anybody has any questions for Akshay or Lindsay, you may turn your camera on, or you can pop a message into the chat and I can read it out to them. But I know there was somebody sending me a message who was hoping to be able to speak. So now's your chance.
My name is Abhi. I'm from India. But I'm a big fan of Akshay Tyagi's celebrity styling. I will follow him daily. Like I used to open every minute Instagram page, and I used to watch Akshay Tyagi, how he was doing. Latest, I watched the Night Manager series also. In that, he worked there. Like I feel very impressed from his work. I have few questions for him. Can I ask you?
Sure.
So, for which film you feel most difficult by designing costumes?
The most difficult film for costumes would actually be one that I cannot talk much about yet, because I've just finished it. But it is something that is coming out soon, and it's actually coming out early next year. And it is something that made me reconnect to my early days of textile, which was really nice. Because over like a very long time, over the last decade, I kind of was known more for the contemporary styling that I work with within costume design. But this ended up being a bit of like a historical period costume in a very like unique setting within India. And I am very excited for it to come out. So you will have to wait till next year to see it. Try to listen to what it is that the person is asking me. So I think as long as you are able to remember that you are there for a job first and foremost, it's not that, yes, you bring in your touch to it once you understand the brief. Like I'm gonna like, yes, you tell me to spell the alphabet in a certain way, I will do it. But then I will tell you how to rearrange the alphabet and say, isn't this the better way to look at it? And I think that's a like profession as a creative. I think Lindsay, you and I both know in fashion, like we have to keep turning the task on its head no matter what, and that's what kind of keeps us fresh. So
yeah, I think it's a different perspective of like, I've changed locations like midnight before a shoot one time, so like,
oh
you
my
know,
god,
it's
I would be stressed if
something
you were
came
the
up.
photographer.
Well, like the thing is that something
Yeah.
was published that day, and I was like, I
Yeah.
can't shoot here anymore, right? Because I'm like, this is
Right.
kind of, so and like the best thing is when you have teams that trust you, like they all pulled up and they were like, you know, they were fine. Like
Yeah,
it's you have to,
you
because
get it. Yeah, you have to.
yeah,
You
it's
just
like
get
you
it.
have, like, you know, because you know,
Yeah.
but then the thing is when I shoot something and it's for a magazine that's more like digital, and then I see a higher end magazine kind of doing the same thing, I don't get upset because they all follow me and that means that I'm doing something right. So, but you got to keep
Yeah.
twisting it. It's a lot of work, but it's good.
Yeah. In terms of costume design, you have to really look at different schools, whether it might be a textile degree, whether it might be like, for me, I didn't do a costume design program. I studied textiles and fashion, and then I worked in retail and I did visual merchandising, and then I got into personal styling, and that is what then randomly led me to costume design, right? So yeah.
Eleanor says, I want to ask Lindsay about the opportunities that she had during her educational journey. Were the events and big festivals that she attended were attended by her personally, or was it planned by NASCAD? Lindsay, can you speak a bit to Eleanor's question?
Can you repeat the question? Like, we'll say it one more time.
Yeah, the opportunities that I wanted to ask Lindsay about the opportunities that she had during her educational journey. Were the events and big festivals that she attended by
I guess talking about to the New York trip, maybe was
yes, maybe that was it. Was that something that was like your own initiative, or was that a NASCAD planned event?
I had, so Bob Bean was one of my professors, and Bob will, like, you know, so Bob was like, we had so many classes and we were like, I think it was I waited to do an advanced photo technique course because like to get the major in photography. So I took a semester off, and then we had some other classes anyways. I was like, when are we going to New York? You know, and I was like, everyone's like talking about these amazing New York trips and all these things and so on and so forth. And then it was a Beyond the Frame class, I think, or one of the classes, I can't remember it. I walked in with my coffee, maybe 10 minutes late. And then like they said they were going to New York. So it was an NASCAD thing, but like it was a great right group of people. So NASCAD put that together. The two professors, there was another professor, like a teacher, her name, she was like a helping Bob. She was doing her master's, like, you know, so she came as well. And yeah, that was all planned out. And, you know, you have to, that was with NASCAR. Some of the other things is like, when I was in school, I was head bartender of a catering company. I worked at Reitman Smart Set, like in the change room during the lunch hours, because right there, like in that school, that little, the Scotia Skit Center, or whatever it is. I also did stuff like for to exchange services for photos for like my hair, and like, you know, at a hair salon. And then I used to basically open the doors for a drawing class. So like, and anything that like, and for NASCAR as well, like that, the photo exhibit we did, that was through another class with Bob, you know. So I was basically going around doing what I could do. And then if I saw an opportunity, there was a clothing school called 2428 as well that was down somewhere downtown, and I just approached them. So I think it's just the NASCAD things was getting conversations going, but it was basically through NASCAD and through other opportunities that if I saw something that I sat with, that I could resonate with, then I would run with that. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Yeah, like the mix
Yeah.
of like being assertive and confident and kind of going after what you want to go after, but also knowing that there are people at the school who have your best interests and at heart and have resources there for you, and reaching out to them also. Yeah.
Plant seeds, you know, like it's one of those things, like even for Toronto Fashion Week here, I was, how do I get in? I don't want to pay for tickets. And then I was doing this, I was working for this one magazine called Preferred Men's Magazine. And I was like, you guys don't have a fashion editor. Can I be your fashion editor? I've been, you know, and he's like, sure. And then I would submit as accreditation as a fashion editor of this men's magazine. And, you know, and then I was sitting front row at Toronto Fashion Week, you know, like next to everybody else. But like, I think it's like, what is the requirements? How do you get your requirement? Because no one's going to give it to you and figure it out, because everyone's path is different. But I mean, if you have people at NASCAT, then there's a good group of you. Like the people that were around me that were close to me, like, you know, Elliot's on here. I don't know if he's there, but like, it was a very special time. You know, it's definitely, you got your peers, and then if you connect with a professor like that's like, keep that, you know. I still talk to Bob every now and again, you know what I mean? Like, I'll have moments and I'll be like, okay, like, you know. So it's, you know, the opportunities, if you're within NASCAT, like, move with your people, because you don't know where they're going to end up too, you know what I mean? You got to have your people. Like, I was just also looking on the alumni, like, I didn't realize there were so many people around the world, and I got to tap in with Trina, because like, these LA meetups, this one, I was like, okay, like, we're like, let's, like, we should all, like, I want to know these people, because they're not, like, they're NASCAT alumni. And so, but definitely through NASCAT, and just basically owning your own situation. Yeah.
I have a question. So can I go?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So my question is for both of you. I guess I would be interested to know what at this stage in your career, you know, you're like 15 or whatever years in post-graduation, what do you find motivates you? And like, I know you kind of both touched on, you know, burnout and the importance of taking a break and like recharging, but like on a regular basis, what motivates you, and how does that compare to, say, what motivated you as a student versus what motivates you, you know, as a mid-career level artist?
You go first. Go ahead.
Lindsay, oh, I love it.
You go first.
Okay, so firstly, Heather and I think are both class of '08. So we graduated together, and you are already a phenomenal jewelry designer who is also doing amazing work all the time, still today. So I should ask you, what motivates you? Because you have created incredible work since then. I remember, like, with all your wheels and pulleys and systems, and it was so incredible. And I love, like, just staying in touch with you throughout life. You know, it's like, I mean, at this point, I've known you for 20 years, which is incredible. And here you are supporting, like, being on this chat. So thank you. And but what motivates me? I think this motivates me. Like, the fact that I have creative, amazing friends who are also so very much still active, doing things, and, you know, like, some are evolving what the kind of work they're doing. So that is kind of interesting. Like, oh wait, even I can change, like, my approach to certain things. Or some people are so religiously clear to the kind of work they create that they're just like, that is inspiring for me as well. Like, you know, to see somebody be so clear from the day they started, like, picked up the first set of tools or whatever it is, like, to whatever they're creating. So for me, till date, I mean, sometimes the thrill of it all, like the kind of, you know, universal success does motivate me. I will not lie. It's a very nice feeling when you get, like, you know, recognized for your work in some capacity. You can notice, like, I start blinking extra because it makes me really awkward. But like, I mean, I know, like, Abhi here, who is on this chat as well, is somebody who does, I mean, I do know that he contacts me regularly via Instagram or messages and stuff, just to, like, to be, like, keeping a track of what I'm doing, how I'm doing, what is it, how did I make this happen, how did I do that happen. I honestly would just say that, like, I kind of don't sit there with an end agenda per se. I have to remind myself why I am doing what I'm doing. Like, yes, you can work, like, for $500 a minute for some really tiring job, or you can also, you know, work on, like, $500 a day for a job that gives you a lot more fulfillment or a lot more joy. Like, it's all relative, right? Like, how you want to use your time, how you want to use your energy, and how you want to stay, I guess, like, really, like, true to yourself when you are creating as a service. It's not just creating for the sake of creating, but, like, you know, in school, it's all cute and fun and enjoyable, and you don't really have repercussions. to certain things. Okay, maybe like a bad grade, but like you're still going to get through it, right? Like, but I think as a profession, it's very important that there's a lot more at stake. Like, you know, you doing something wholeheartedly with rational reasoning, with understanding, with explanation is part of like, sometimes you have to like really sell the job before you even get the job. And it's really tricky. Like as a stylist, as a designer, I have to present a full mood board for a project. And if they don't approve it, they'll just be like, oh, well, sorry, you know, thanks, but somebody else is going to do it. And you learn from that. So I think failure motivates me a lot. I love failing constantly, actually. I like being rejected for things. I like applying for a randomly ambitious like project and then just be like, you know, you were close enough, or you were like, hey, actually, we decided we want to go with your vision, even though you're not done something like this. So I would say these combination of things that keep happening over the last, I guess, 2 decades of working now. So yeah.
Yeah.
But thanks for asking. Lindsay.
It's me. You know what? For me, it's just so, it's a really crazy question because I'm in a transition period right now. So I literally, like I said, I just took a break and my motivation has changed. So I just moved into a new space. Before I'd have to, like, I was in a studio that I would live in and flip into a studio. Now I have a permanent studio space and a living space. And, you know, so I had to switch things out. I'm definitely more focused on my mental health. I'm definitely more focused on getting up in the morning and having time to myself. And, you know, like what used to motivate me in school was the kill, you know what I mean? Like going in with like a project and, you know, like it was, I welcomed all of the energy that was in and like getting my point across. And now it's like I don't feel like I need to get my point across anymore. My point's been come across. Like I'm an established artist. I have to own that I'm an established artist. I have to actually take a sit down of what it is that I've accomplished. And it's like now that I'm here, what are my next goals? So like motivation for me is like helping other people. I love placing people in different aspects. I love seeing other people elevate because I know the struggles that I've had. So if I have the opportunity to put someone in a position to talk to somebody like a young actress with another actress or a stylist or, you know, or bring them on sets or put them, you know, get them a job like that, giving back is so important to me because I feel like during the pandemic, people lost the opportunities to do internships. They lost the opportunities to do like, they didn't have the opportunities I had, and they lost the ability to get that spark to be excited about what fashion is and being involved with it, because you got to sit there and experience it and see it. You know, my first set that I was on was a set with Chris Nichols, and it was in Nova Scotia. We were running around and like, you know, I was doing whatever I could to help out. I quit all 5 of my jobs and I moved to Toronto a month later. But it wasn't for, like, I literally every day they kept asking me to go back. I worked for Scanway Catering and like there was a thing at Art Gallery Nova Scotia and I quit my job to go have dinner and do things like it's giving back to people right now and connecting. That's like that meeting at Snapchat Canada yesterday. You know, I went to the president of the Canadian Arts and Fashion Awards. He's like, you know what, we would really appreciate something that we can put on our wall to say that we were an honoree. I understand you got to get the, and okay, like, how do we create opportunities for young creatives who are trying to flip when you get to this point and you want to be here because they're booking the same people? So when I putting all those people in that room yesterday, it just filled my heart so much because the conversation. So I think it's about growing with people and literally aligning yourself with people that have the same I guess energy that you have and giving back and forth. So like I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you for both of you. Like,
You're
especially
welcome.
for myself, like being at a very similar stage in the career, like this is kind of like a therapy session, like hearing about all of your highs and lows and everything. And like it's all like
Oh,
really relevant.
girl, if you ever want to hop on a phone call and have some conversation, you can call me anytime because and you know, it's, you know, the highs and lows, you know. And honestly, I know your work and it's very beautiful. Like,
Thank you.
Hats off to you.
Heather, you just got to visit Bombay.
It's on the list. I'll be there soon.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for your answers and for all of your thoughtful conversations today. It was such a pleasure to chat with both of you. For anyone still tuned in, we've got links to both Akshay and Lindsay's websites in the chat, so please feel free to check out more of their work. We're taking a break, I believe, from artwork NASCAD alumni talks next month, but we'll be back in September. So stay tuned, keep in touch with your NASCAD community here and everywhere. And Akshay and Lindsay, thank you again so much. It was such a treat.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be,
Yes,
have
thank
someone
you
from
guys.